Hi everyone, WebDunce here. In this video I'll be showing you how to make this pearl ring, and not just the ring but also the materials. So how to make the silver material as well as the pearl material. And I'll show you how to make not only a light colored pearl but also a dark colored pearl. We'll start off by creating a new file. I'm going to use the small objects millimeters template. We'll jump over to the front viewport and lay in the sizing circle. I'm going to make this a US size 7, so I'll give it a diameter of 17.32 millimeters. And we'll move the curve seam down to the bottom. And now we're ready to make our bottom arc. I'm going to give this ring an even thickness all the way around the bottom half of the ring. So to do that, we'll lay in a point here at the left quad, and I'll move it out by the thickness that I want, which is 1.7 millimeters. And then we'll grab the arc tool. We'll put the center of the arc in the center of the world. We'll snap to this point here, rotate around, and snap to the quad on the other side of the sizing circle. And then we can delete this point. And now we're ready to lay in the upper half of the ring. For the upper half of the ring, what I'd like to do is lay in another arc. We'll put the center of this arc also at the center of the world. We'll snap to the left end of this bottom arc, and then we'll snap to the top quad of the sizing circle. All right, and then we'll turn on the edit. We'll select the arc we just made and turn on the edit points, and we will raise this point a little bit. Not very much, just a little bit. We'll adjust it later. You don't want to move these 2 points, only this one, and only up and down. And now we can mirror this over to the other side. With the edit points turned on, we can adjust that, and as you can see, it follows the motion also on the other side. So I'll hit escape a couple of times to turn off the edit points, and now we'll create the pearl and the pearl cup. To make the pearl, we'll come over here to Solid Tools and grab a sphere, and we'll put the sphere in the middle of the world and give it a diameter of 8 millimeters. So that's our pearl, and now we're ready to make the pearl cup. To make the pearl cup, we'll lay in a straight line about here, hold down Shift and pull out to the side to make it perfectly horizontal. And if you can just imagine that what is under the line will be the pearl cup. You don't want to make the pearl cup too large, or it will cover up, hide too much of the pearl. You don't want to make it too small. So somewhere in this area here is where I usually put the line that will make the, split the pearl to make the pearl cup. But, and I normally just eyeball it. I'm not normally very precise with that. Sometimes I am. And I will be this time, but only because we are doing a tutorial. So I want us all to end up with the same result. So let's put this line here at the bottom of the pearl. And then from there, let's raise it up 1.3 millimeters. Now we'll make a copy of the pearl by selecting it and then pressing Ctrl C and then Ctrl V on the keyboard. And then we'll split this copy of the pearl with this line. So click on the split command and then the line, and then hit enter. And now we can delete this line, and also let's delete this upper portion of that pearl that we just made. And now we have the original pearl and also the beginnings of our pearl cup. Now we'll come over here to Surface Tools and Offset Surface. Set the distance to 0.8. We'll make this pearl cup 0.8 millimeters thick. Make sure that solid is set to no and that both sides is set to no. And just look at your arrows and be sure that they're pointing outward and not inward. If they're pointing inward like this, all you have to do is click on Flip All up in the command line to make them point outward, but they should be pointing outward by default for you. And then hit enter. And now that has offset that surface. Now what we need to do is blend these two surfaces together. So we'll just click on blend surface, click on this edge and then this edge and hit enter. And then you'll get this pop-up dialog here. Make sure that for column 1 and column 2, it's set to tangency on both of them. So if it's set, for instance, to curvature, be sure to click on tangency for both of them. And then click on this lock. This will cause the sliders to move together, or if you make a change in this text box, the change will be reflected in the other text box. I didn't mean to to actually close out the command. So I'm going to run it again, clicking here and there, hitting enter, making sure they're both set to tangency, clicking on the lock. And you can put this wherever you want, but I'm going to put it at 0.6 right there. And then select all of it and join it together. And now we've got our pearl cup done, and we're ready to make the pearl post. Before we make the post, we first need to hide the pearl. So select the pearl and then type HI up in the command line and hit enter, and that should hide it for you. Now we want to make a straight line. We'll start that line off here in the center of the world. And this pearl, if you remember, was 8 millimeters in diameter. And the holes for these posts usually go halfway through the pearl, which would be 4 millimeters. So we're going to make this line 4 millimeters long. And then I'm going to type 4 up in the command line and hit enter. That's going to limit the length of the line to 4 millimeters. Then I'm going to hold shift and pull straight up and click to make it perfectly vertical. Now we'll pipe this line, so click on it, click on solid tools, and then pipe with flat caps. We'll give this a diameter of 0.8 and hit enter, I think 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then we can delete this line. We don't need that anymore. Next, I want to kind of soften the top of it just a bit so it doesn't have this sharp corner. So we'll grab our fillet edges tool and we'll give it a radius of 0.15 and then just select the top edges there and hit enter a couple times. Now we'll drag this post down until it just enters into the cross section of the pearl cup. Okay? And then we'll weld these two together. So click with the post selected, hold down shift and click on the pearl cup and then click on Boolean Union, and that will weld them together. So this is our pearl cup with the post. Now we can type show and bring the pearl back, and we'll move the pearl and the pearl cup up until the bottom of the pearl cup is touching the top of the sizing circle. From there, let's move it up 1 millimeter. Okay, and now we're ready to make some final adjustments to the shoulders of the ring. Now, normally I would just kind of eyeball how we adjust this shoulder here, but let's select it and turn on edit points, and I would just move this up or down until I liked how it looked. And I'm really thinking about this as well, the distance between this line and the edge of the cup as well. Because I know I want to put a fairly large, I'm going to put like a 0.3 millimeter fillet here. So you don't want it to be like this, or there won't be, the fillet would have to come after this edge. So you'd have to come down at least 0.3 millimeters for there to be a 0.3 millimeter fillet there. So this is too high, and this is probably too low. So, you know, somewhere in between those two extremes, and I would probably just eyeball it typically. But again, because we're doing a tutorial and I would like us all to end up with basically the same result, then I'm going to be a little bit more precise than I normally am. And I'm going to put a circle right here at this point. The center of the circle will be at that point right there. If you don't get a quad snap, turn on your near snaps and you will probably, let me try that. Let me turn off the quad snap and see if I get a near snap. Yes. So see, we're getting a near snap. Also, make sure you've got project turned on. But I'm going to turn my quad snaps back on because they're very handy. But anyway, you're going to snap a circle to there. Once it snaps, just click, and then that'll be the center of your circle. We want the radius, not the diameter, but the radius to be 0.6 millimeters. I basically want this line to cross over at 0.6 millimeters away from this point right here. Now, we will just select the circle and the cup, and we will come to curve tools and intersect, object intersection. And that's going to put these 2 points here. We don't need the top one, so we can delete that. And we can delete this circle. We don't need that anymore. We just need this point right here. Now we'll select our edit point here and just move it up a little bit until it looks like it's crossing through that point. It doesn't have to be 100% precise. If we move in, you can see it's not 100% precise. But just so that it looks like it's crossing through there, you know, at a reasonable zoom. So, okay, and that really is all there is to it. We're done with the shoulders. Now what we need to do is join all of these curves together. and move the curve seam to that top point. You may have to hide the pearl and pearl cup to get a good snap, to make sure you're not snapping on anything else when you move that curve seam. So mine is snapping there just fine, but if you find it's difficult to get it to snap there, just maybe hide the pearl cup and maybe that'll work out better for you. Okay, and we're actually ready to move on to making the side curves now. Okay, so we'll hop over to the right viewport, zoom in a little bit. I'm going to put another point down here at the bottom of the ring, and I know that at the bottom I want this ring to be 2.5 millimeters wide, so I'm going to grab that point and move it out by half that distance. So I'm going to click on this arrow and type 2.5 divided by 2 in the text box there, and this point is where the ring intersects the pearl cup, and I would like the ring to be about 1.2 millimeters wide there. So I'm going to grab this point and I'm going to move it out 1.2 divided by 2. Now we're going to grab the arc tool, so come to curve tools and come down to this arc tool here, and you've got two choices here. We're just going to click on it, and on that one you click on a start point, an end point, and then you choose your direction from your start point. So because of that, we're going to click on the bottom point first. This is going to be our start point. Then we're going to click on the upper point up here. Now we can choose our direction, and you can see that it's coming from this bottom point here. The direction is. And the direction we want is straight up. So hold down Shift and pull straight up and click. All right. And then we can delete these points. We don't need them anymore. And I forgot to say, make sure that you've got project turned on when you make this line. So let me just back up and show you why. If we go back to the front viewport, you can see that this point is not in line with the axis. This one is, but this one isn't. So we'll go back to the right viewport. I'll turn off project, and I'll lay in that arc again, clicking here, and then holding down Shift and pulling up. But if we go back to the front viewport, you can see that my line is actually connecting the 2 points from this view, but I want it to be straight up and down. So if I just delete this line, go back to the right viewport and turn on project, and then run that arc command again, clicking on the bottom point and then the top point, holding down Shift and pulling up and click. If we jump back to the front viewport, you can see that that line is perfectly straight along the axis in the front viewport, and that's because we had project turned on while we were creating this line right here. So we snapped to this point, but it was projected back to the construction plane of the right viewport, which is in line with the green axis of the front viewport. Okay, so we'll go back to the right viewport and we'll delete these points. We don't need them anymore. And now what we want to do is extend this curve so that it comes a little past the top of the ring and a little below the bottom of the ring. So we'll click on Extend Curve, and then click on the top part of this line and pull up until it's over the top of the ring a little bit, and then click on the bottom part of the ring and pull down a little bit so that it's extending a little bit lower than the bottom of the ring, and then hit Enter. Now we'll mirror this line over to the other side, and we'll connect these two lines together with straight lines at the top and also at the bottom. Now we will select these lines. So just in case you don't know already, if you box select something from left to right, whatever you select, all of it has to be within the box to select it. But if you box, see if I do like this, nothing doesn't get selected. Only this line at the bottom, which was in the box. If I do this, nothing gets selected. But if you select pulling from right to left, it only has to touch the box to become included in the selection. So I'm just going to drag this box from right to left and touch these 3 curves to select them, and then hold down Shift and click on this one to select it. So now I've got all 4 curves selected, and I'm going to join them together to create a closed shape. So now we have both our front curves and our side curves completed, and we're ready to create the base shape. So let's select the 2 front curves and then jump up here to Solid Tools and Extrude. And we'll extrude those. And let's turn on a shaded view to make that easier to look at. Now we'll select these side curves and also extrude them. And you want to make sure that your shapes go past each other in both directions. So you want this shape to go past this shape, and you want this shape to go past this shape. Now we're going to take the intersection of these two shapes. So click on one of them and then click on Boolean intersection and then click on the other shape and hit enter. And this leaves us with the intersection of those two shapes. All right, and now what we'll do is bring back the pearl. Oops. So sometimes it doesn't catch the first letter I type. Let me try that again. There we go. And now if we hide the pearl and we look in the pearl cup, you can see that the ring protrudes into the pearl cup, and we don't want that. I'll type show to bring back the pearl, and we'll go into the front viewport, and this is better if you've got wireframe view on. So let's zoom in here. What we want to do is trim this ring so that it doesn't protrude into the pearl cup anymore. And the way we're going to do that is to select the pearl and make a copy of it. So select it and then press Ctrl C and then Ctrl V on the keyboard, and then hold down Shift. And while you're holding that down, drag on this handle here, and the pearl, the copy of the pearl, will scale in all directions. And you want to scale it until it is, kind of running through the middle of the cross section of the pearl cup. So right about here somewhere. And now we will select the ring, which is giving us a choice. When you click on the edge here, it's giving you a choice to select between the curve and the poly surface. You want to click on the poly surface because that's the ring. And then we'll run the Boolean difference command. And we don't want to keep this sphere that we just made, so you want delete input to be set to yes up here in the command line. So if it says no, click on it and change it to yes. Then click on the sphere and hit enter. And you can see it was deleted at the completion of the operation. And now if we go back to the perspective viewport and hide the pearl, you can see that the ring no longer protrudes into the cup, which is what we want. And now what we'll do is fillet the edges on the ring. So let's run the fillet edges command, and let's do at first 0.2 and click on the inner edges here and hit enter a couple times. Run it again, and this time give it a radius of 0.5 and click on the outer edges and put a 0.5 radius fillet on those edges. Okay, and now we can weld the cup to the ring with the Boolean union command, and then we'll put a 0.3 fillet between this juncture here, between the cup and the ring. So grab the fillet edges command, type in a radius of 0.3. This time click on chain edges and then click on one of the edges. And it should, because we've got chain edges turned on, it should select all the way around for you, and then hit enter 3 times. And there you go. Now we've got this nice fillet joining the ring to the pearl cup. And we can type show to bring back the pearl. And actually, let's hide the pearl and the ring and select these curves, and we'll put them on the blue layer. And I'll rename that layer curves. And we can turn them off. And then we'll type show again to bring back the ring and the pearl. And now we're ready to start working on the materials. So let's start off by switching to rendered view, and we'll change that background. So click on the rendering tab, come down here to backdrop and click on gradient. Click on the top color box and click on this drop down and change it to custom color list. And let's set that top color to gray, and then click on the bottom color box and change it to white. All right, and now we can start making our materials. So click on the materials tab, click on this plus sign, and click on metal. It's creating a kind of silver material by default, and it's highlighting the name, giving us a chance to type in something else. So I'm going to type silver there, and we'll just go ahead and drag this over onto the ring, which looks okay. Now, if you may have this, it may show the properties, or it may not. So if it doesn't show the properties, just double click on the material ball. And then we want to change the color a little bit, so click on the color box. Because we're on the custom color list now, or you should be on the custom color list, but because we are editing a metal material, Rhino is showing us metal colors, and only metal colors in the custom color list. So click on silver and click OK. And you can see it just darkened it up a little bit. The next thing that you could play around with if you want is the polish level. So I'd say somewhere between 70 and 100 is probably going to be okay for polished materials. From 70 to 85, you may, if you present this to clients, that they may not be 100% sure that you plan on polishing the metal. I have had a couple of clients, when I give them this kind of soft look, I like this soft look, but I have one or two customers worry that I wasn't going to polish the ring because to them this looked kind of flat. And I don't think it looks flat, I think it looks polished, but you know, it's just a kind of a, when you bring it down to this level, like 75, it looks a little stylized, you know. So, but somewhere between 75 and 100 should be good. I like it around the default of 85. Now, you can slide this slider around, or you can double click on it and type in a value, by the way. So I'm going to put it back to the default of 85%. But you can play around with that and set it to whatever you like best. Just remember that you're representing polished metal. And now we'll make a material for the pearl. So we'll click on plus up here, and believe it or not, we'll click on metal again. We'll call this pearl, and we're going to give it a polish level of 55. Well, let's drag it over onto the pearl first. You see it looks like a big silver ball. But we're going to adjust the polish level down to 55. And you can see that already that looks a lot like a pearl. Now you can bring it down lower. You could go down to 44, 40 even. If you like a kind of a softer look to it. Again, that would be kind of stylized. Anywhere between say 40 and maybe 60 for a light colored pearl should be okay. But I'm gonna double click it and put it on 55. And this is a white pearl, but you can click on the color box and change the color. So let's go from custom color list to HSV sliders, and let's give this a little bit of saturation, just three points of saturation here. And you can see now it's got a tint to it, and you can change that hue to whatever you like. But I'm going to put it at kind of an orangey color, so we'll put it at 25, I think. Okay. And so that's just kind of a nice warm colored light pearl. And we'll also go ahead and make a dark colored pearl. So we'll hit this plus sign again, click on metal, and we'll drag this over onto the pearl, and we'll rename this to Pearl Dark. And let's bring the polish level down to 65%, and we'll click on the color box. We'll give it a value of 65 and a saturation of 7, but you can play around with these values now, okay? And we'll go for kind of a blue color. All right. So there you go. That is our pearl ring. We've modeled it. We've made the materials, and that wraps up this tutorial. Thank you everyone for watching, and I hope to see all of you in future videos.